Vince, can I ask you, have you got any cast iron examples of Joe Biden's policies making people worse off?
For sure. And in fact, I'll cite one that Biden himself kind of admitted to in late 2021. He was giving a speech in the Port of Baltimore, and he was talking about that first stimulus package that he signed into law when he came into office. It was in the vicinity of $2 trillion in new COVID so-called relief funds. These were unnecessary federal government expenditures paid for by literally printing the money and thus spiking inflation yet again. Biden would say in that speech that the effect of that, he said, ironically, is people have more money now, but when you have more money, there are fewer goods to spend that money on, and as a result, prices go up. He was right about the fundamental economics. The government spending by Joe Biden and his Democrat colleagues has led to that big inflation that has left Americans poorer since the pandemic than they were 4 years ago. So it's not a good thing. And in fact, we're at a point where we're approaching $35 trillion in debt. Congress may not actually raise taxes literally, but it is taxing the American people through inflation, through printing money by way of the Federal Reserve. And that's a bad thing. That leaves Americans struggling.
Okay, Ethan, I mean, apparently that's a bad thing. It's going to leave Americans struggling. Biden is responsible for all of that. The bubble's going to burst at some point.
Yeah. Again, Vince conveniently ignores that initial spending when COVID hit was actually under President Trump and his proposal. It was continued by President Biden and increased. Furthermore, let's talk about President Trump's economic policies that increased the debt and the deficit spending in a hot economy at the greatest time in U.S. history. Before COVID. So President Biden, by the way, he's not wrong that putting money in people's pockets, which Vince just contradicted himself by saying that, is a good thing, that we want people to have money in their pockets. Yes, that can drive inflation. However, the data show, and there's a report, that in 2023, the inflation, 53% of it is attributable to corporate profit taking. Excess profits by large corporations, multinational corporations, preying upon the consumers. That's nothing to do with the president. That has to do with greed.
Look, I'm happy to go after corporations, but that's a canard, unfortunately, because what you have is you had the companies paying dramatically higher prices than they were passing on to their own consumers. In fact, they were insulating consumers from the price increases that they were experiencing for some time. Now they're on about par. And the average company in America is now paying 18% higher prices for the goods that they're taking in and producing. And then Americans are paying approximately 18% higher prices as well. It's on parity. In other words, they're not taking advantage of them. Americans are just paying the higher prices that these companies have to pay in the first place.